He's had some colleagues on the podcast, so we knew at some point we had to find a way, even with how busy his schedule is, to get Paul Kosuth on with me. He is managing director of broadcast at U.S. Equestrian. He has worked many years in sports media. He's got a really cool story. We're going to talk about it on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a broadcaster doing different sports, but this is a sports media podcast. Paul, I know you've been aware of this. We do things a little bit differently, and I think it's kind of cool because we talk business, but we also talk about the human side. So I'm thrilled to have you on, and I appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, Brian. I look forward to it. I've been fortunate. I've had a really amazing career. I've been in the right place at the right time, and have been able to convince a number of TV executives that they should hire me. And it's luckily it's worked out for me.
Timing is such an important part of this. Where do you feel like that timing came to your benefit the most, besides the point that you have to have talent? I know you're a humble guy, but where has timing really changed your life and the trajectory of your career?
So I it actually it's been a couple different places. I attended college at the University of Akron, and they had a TV program. We had a TV studio and a small TV truck, and we produced content for a local PBS station in conjunction with WKSU and WNYS and Youngstown State University. And one of our teachers had a part-time job at the Richfield Coliseum working the in-screen video boards, and he was looking for some winter help. And a couple of us students that he thought would enjoy it, he brought out to tour the place. And so I got hired to work at the Coliseum part-time during college to run camera for Cavaliers basketball. And from there, I met some production folks and got involved in freelance production, and happened to be at the Coliseum working when Sports Channel Ohio was forming. So I learned that the executive in charge of hiring was going to be at the building meeting with the Cavaliers about a contract. So I put on a sport coat and a tie, and I made sure that I bumped into this guy in the hallway and introduced myself and said, "Hey, I'm your first producer director for Sports Channel Ohio." And from there, it was an interview process, but I was hired to be the first full-time producer director at Sports Channel, producing Cavaliers and Indians on cable. It was timing, but I sold myself, and I was lucky to be in the right place and be able to make the right contacts.
Putting in the extra work to get noticed is something that I feel is a common denominator for people in this industry. It doesn't matter whether you're working on the production side, whatever side you're working on, it's going beyond what is expected and what people think you should do. How have you found that? And it looks like that's a great example of how you first sort of got embedded in the industry. How have you found yourself really enjoying how in seeing how a lot of your success could be predicated on not, and not that you would ever do this, but just to realize that there's what people require of you, and you always seem to kind of take it one notch above that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that process. And I've been fortunate enough. I was a freelance TD for about 10 years in Cleveland as well, and I worked with a lot of really interesting producers and directors on basketball and baseball and college sports. And so you take what you can from that, and you learn, and you make contacts. I did some traveling as a freelance TD for Big Ten schools. Met a lot of interesting ADs and college athletes, and was able to utilize some of those contacts in later careers and moves, and learning what's out there and what's available. So for me, it was always about learning and listening and seeing where I could be next. I mean, it's funny, I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of full-time gigs, but I've always looked for that next position, even though I'm happy. You have a great job, you like it, but I always found that making sure that I knew what was out there was important for the next possible position. Not that I wanted it, but I'd like to look, I like to see what's out there. I'd like to network. And I've been fortunate. I've been able to use some of those contacts to help me get jobs or help me talk to people about jobs.
Speaking of the job that you're doing right now in the world of equestrian, how has that challenged you and furthered your talent as a production executive in what it takes to cover a sport like that, unlike something else that you've worked on, say calves or anything Cleveland sports related in general?
Yeah, so I've been a ball sticks producer my whole life, from Cleveland to Pittsburgh to Florida. It's been traditional ball and stick sports. So this position, much different. I work for the Federation. So the U.S. Equestrian Federation basically licenses horse shows in the U.S. We make sure that it's safe for the rider, it's safe for the horse, it's safe for the spectator. And so part of our group is responsible for overseeing live streaming, and that's really my core position. So this year we will stream 130 live horse shows on our network, USEF network. That's www.usefnetwork. You can find us at usef.org.
Sure.
But so we go from a simple one camera with the PA and effects mics and no graphics to our biggest event of the year, which is our Kentucky 3-day, which is it's actually 4 days of eventing, which is dressage, cross country, and show jumping. And for the uninitiated, dressage is really a test for a horse under a controlled ring where they perform specific moves and are judged on the horse control that they have. Cross country is, horse and rider going over jumps, up and down hills, crossing valleys, going through water obstacles on a timed course. And then show jumping is in a stadium where they jump over various jumps and test from anywhere from 2 feet to 4 feet tall. And that's a production that we're here for 7 days. I have a crew of 50. I have 7 or 8 talent. We're streaming 8 hours a day. We're producing for our network, for ESPN. It's a huge event. It's like our Super Bowl. So it's been interesting to see the difference in those kind of productions. And then it's really, as a federation, with our network, we try to showcase all of the breeds and disciplines. So we're showcasing Morgans, Pasafinos, Arabians, all the way from actually one of the biggest shows we do here. It's called the U.S. Equestrian Federation Pony Finals, and this is an event in August where 500 to 600 young riders from 6 to 12 compete potentially in their first horse show with their ponies over the course of 5 days. There are parties and there's cookouts, but it's really children learning how to lead a horse, how to ride a horse, how to compete in front of an audience and be judged, by judges. So it's been an amazing learning opportunity as I work with different organizers around the country. We have horse shows from East to West Coast. We really cover North America. So it's been another learning process. Part of what I like about the world of sports is I've again been involved in a number of sports, but it's learning new sports and new people and new business models. So it's been really a pleasure for me to work in equestrian and learn all of these new events, all these new organizers, and the different business models that we need to succeed and really amplify our great sport.
I think that's what really goes into the survivability that you've had in this industry is the ability to be a chameleon, to be adaptable, and to always be learning and never to be static. And that is a true testament to that vision, that viewpoint you have. I think you're dead on there as the industry changes and evolves to know what's coming. And you've done a great job at that. And I think one of the key themes of this conversation is the importance of being able to do that. You've talked about how much you've learned while working in the equestrian world. What have you learned about what those who are diehards want you to do in terms of the way you storytell, come a broadcast, and what that looks like in that sport?
So, I work in the marketing department here at the Federation, and the company here is really comprised of compliance, of sport directors that oversee the sport, finance, some customer service, but the passion that our staff has for horses. So probably half of our staff own and ride weekly,
Wow.
daily some. I'm fortunate if I work, our office is at the Kentucky Horse Park here in Lexington, and I drive out and there's barns everywhere. So some of our employees have their horses and stables right near the office. They'll go out at lunch and ride. They'll come in the morning and ride and then come to the office. So there's a passion that these folks have for their animal. Um, but they're not just an animal. They really treat them as a co-athlete. We're a sport where you have two athletes in the ring. You have a human and an animal, and they have to work together. And when that synergy works and they succeed, it's just there's a thrill to that I don't see in other sports. And I'm not downplaying other sports. Very difficult to succeed in most sports, but when you have an animal that you have to control and control perfectly to win, it's amazing. We have a couple of folks that are like horse whisperers. The way that they approach their horse and the love they show, it brings out the best in people when you see that kind of commitment to an animal and the response the animal gives back, to the human by enjoying the sport and playing with them on the sport. So that part of the sport has really energized me. And it's challenging. So how do I show that passion on television? How do I show that on a screen with a graphic and tell a story? So what we found is we've been producing a number of kind of behind the scenes stories on a series that we created called the US Equestrian Open. So we are focused now really on producing a couple of national championships in jumping, in dressage, and cross country to tie us to the Olympic disciplines. So we've been following a number of riders and their horses at their barns when they're not on the horse, when they're relaxed and talking about the relationship they have with their animal and with their trainers and with their grooms. And so I think that is a way for us to show the passion that these folks have for their horse, not only in competition, but off of competition. One of the things that we talk about internally is what do you do with the horse the other 23 hours? I mean, we compete for that hour. What happens that other 23? And it's really focused on horse welfare and horse care and that relationship between the horse and the human. And that's really been energizing to me to see that kind of relationship and to try to capture that on camera.
That relationship between loving animal and human and how you've seen that dynamic play out in such a beautiful way on screen and behind the scenes with your events. What can a human to human relationship learn from just the dynamic between what you've seen between the human and the athlete, the co-athlete in the horse, and how they have to work together and figure one another out?
It comes down to trust. You have to be able to trust that horse that he or she knows what you're asking it to do. Much like you and I,
Yeah.
if we develop a relationship, I have to trust you that you're not going to do something that's going to be bad for me or that's going to result in an accident. And that bond that happens is the special piece of that horse human connection. And I think it's a human human connection. Um, I find that horses, it elevates, how do I say this? It makes people happy. There's a pleasure when people go see their horses. So one of the things that happens here at the horse park, we probably have on any given day 100 to 400 horses on the property. There are a number of retired horses that live here. There's a couple of horse museums. Some of our staff go out at lunch with snacks, carrots, and greens, and they just tour the barns and they visit horses during their lunch break. They're not their favorite horses. They just go visit. And, they rub them, they give them, they ask if they can give them a carrot. And it's that daily interaction that just energizes some of the staff here. We have mounted police that ride the park here on their horses, and you can go visit their barn as well. And it's a different kind of, I don't say police force, but they're mounted police. They ride around the park on their horse for order. And it's again, it takes us back to the day when horse and man worked together to survive. I mean, I forget the stat, but since the automobile and horses are kind of put in the back, maybe only a tenth, maybe not even that much of the population has seen a horse, much less ridden a horse or been close to a horse. So our goal here is to try to bring the joy of horse sports to as many people as we can through our message, through our streaming, and through the events that we host here.
The healing part of this too, that you mentioned, the uplifting of spirits. You have coworkers who during off time, lunch, or even before going into work, where they will interact with the horses. It might not be their horse, but I think about horses in general and how valuable they are to warming the human psyche, and that how people that are also soldiers coming back from more post-traumatic stress disorder, how there are groups where soldiers will interact with horses, and you just see how healing that can be. And to your perception of what horses were and what they could do, to now that you're in the thick of things, the further healing that they can do, how have you seen that play out? You touched on it a little bit, but from others' perspectives, but for you, seeing that dynamic up close and personal, how has that made you a better, well-rounded person?
So I'm fortunate. So our the Federation also has a group that works in the community with exactly those kind of programs where we try to identify and reward through financial support community organizations that are like that, that are working with troubled youth or veterans or just in the community where horses aren't available. And so to see that kind of pleasure and the joy, it's just uplifting. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm working for an organization that matters,
Yeah.
that makes a difference in people's lives. We're not just entertaining. Part of what I love about sports is this entertainment. You can get away from the problems of the world for 2 or 3 hours and just enjoy yourself, with your friends, with your family, with people you don't know cheering. And so what these horses do in these community organizations is they bring life back to people that may have lost it somehow, or they lost their joy somehow because of an accident or because of an illness. And to see that, it brings tears to my eyes. It just makes you feel good.
When you feel good in general, especially with what you do, how do you feel like that plays out in just the level of production value? When you love and you have that joy and you feel so intrinsically connected with the community, to not look at it as just entertainment. It is entertainment, but to see it beyond that, how does that make you go beyond what you think you have capable within you to put on a show that perhaps is even a pleasant surprise to yourself?
Oh, it I'm fortunate. I get to come to work and have fun. I really enjoy what I do, and seeing that around the shows and around my job makes my job easier. I mean, it's a job, so there are days that are tough. There's budgets, there's meetings, there's travel. There's stuff you have to do. But what makes it so much fun is seeing that part of the sport, seeing the joy and the pleasure, and being around that and experiencing that, and just seeing the pleasure and the happiness that these horses bring to the staff, to the viewers, to the kids that go to the shows, to the adults, to the grandparents that go, to the older folks that remember horses at a different time, than we did, and the closest they had, and they're tied to horses.
Beyond the happiness that the horses give to you, the community, and all, where else do you find happiness outside of the industry, the business that you work in?
So I've been fortunate. I've been married for 40 plus years to a woman that lets me, follow my passion. I traveled a lot when I was first married. We had a couple young children. We were fortunate enough, we made enough money. She could stay home. She wanted to stay home and care for the children. My wife, Pat, has been awesome. I have a son, Alex, who's married now with a young son. I have a daughter, Lindsay, who's married with two little. I've got three grandchildren. So, and they've supported me in my career. And we've moved a number of times, because I've wanted to, not because I had to. We've always found a nice community to live in with friends and friendship support and family support. And so that's been important. Having that support from home, that she knows that I love what I do, and that it's part of who I am, has also been pleasurable. So, and I talk about all my different sports ideas with her. back when I lived in Pittsburgh, I used to share my tease ideas with her in the morning before I'd go to the Penguins, for a hockey game. I have this idea for this tease. What do you think, babe? She said, well, I don't think that'll work today. Think about it this way. So, it was that kind of relationship that really has helped me grow. And, knowing that there's a family support and love at home, has been, as equally as pleasurable, if not more.
You could not say it any better, especially if you're in this industry and in many industries. If you don't have that person in your corner supporting you through the highs and the lows that this industry can present itself in, it can be very hard. And to have somebody that always believes in you, like your wife does,
Yeah.
it goes without saying that there's such an invaluable effect that that can have on you and others. And obviously, that's a key part to this conversation. My last question for you, we've talked a lot about sports. Here's a fun one for you to wrap it up. Being a grandfather and having the little ones around, how is that a sport? How could that potentially be a sport for you?
So, it's really just spending time and being there, and seeing the changes and remembering with my two children what the change they went through, and seeing that with them, and then seeing your children do the same things with their children. That's the pleasure. It's like the payoff. It's like, okay, we practiced this. We're on the 10-yard line. How do we get in the end zone? Okay, we did it. Now watch my son do it to his son. So that's kind of the way I see that it's a full circle here with the grandkids.
I started out this conversation talking about how we were getting a 360 look of you. You said full circle. I feel like that's what we did. We got that full circle look at you, which is exactly what I was hoping for. We touched on some really cool things, the passion you have, the ability to adapt, the support that you have, and how important that is towards the vitality of your career. A lot of other fun tidbits we got into as well. Paul Kosuth is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. Paul, thanks so much for taking the time and giving us a real deep inside look at what you do from a work standpoint, but also a family standpoint too.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.